right, there we go. I got everything working.
Yay.
Good afternoon. How are we doing? Welcome to Another Words. My name is Brent Lancaster. Really appreciate you tuning in today, where we have a very special guest, our very own Evan Fuchs. How are you, sir?
Fabulous.
Woo-hoo, Evan.
How are you, my friends?
Doing great. So how's everybody doing? Let's go around the horn. Jody, what's been happening?
Hey, I'm still standing in this spot doing a lot of virtual programs and having a blast learning all the new technology.
Well, good. We'll save our guests for last. Lee, how things been happening?
I am staying busy. I told y'all to go get listings. I got a new one. I got a new one this morning. It's on the market. Got a sign in the yard already showing. That's how you do it, people.
It'll probably be sold by the time we get done with this.
That would be awesome. Then I'm going to need another one, right?
There you go.
But yeah,
Evan,
that and teaching, and I'm getting ready to do a diversity course for Boston. So that's going to be fun. I want to say that I appreciate Boston for recognizing that a Southern chick might know something about diversity. A white Southern chick, by the way. So yeah, things are great. What about you, Brent?
I'm last. We're going to talk to Evan. How's he doing?
Okay.
I'm good. Our real estate market here is ridiculously on fire. I was joking about listings, but man, we get a listing and they're selling immediately. And it's like, even from before the whole shutdown and everything, we're way busier than we were before. And I mean, to the point where it's silly how much of a seller's market it is in most of our market, like a lot of people, on the speaking front, like you guys, I've been doing a lot of shuffling and converting stuff to virtual delivery and trying to be, flexible with everybody to rearrange what we have already on the books. It's just such a weird time trying to get all that stuff to line up and still educate and all that. So
and come to an agreement.
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah, come to an agreement. Absolutely. Yeah, and then we had a little vacation. I don't know if I mentioned that last week, but I went with my family. We were gone for a few days, so that was nice. And so with all things considered, it's going pretty good.
Awesome. Good. Everybody's doing well. I'm good. We're rocking and rolling. Just kind of moving and grooving. We're going on an extended vacation on Friday. So in 2 days, I'm out of here. So y'all tell our next week's guest, Elizabeth Mendenhall, that I said hello. I will miss her. So
yeah, you're gonna miss a good one there, bud.
I know. I'm a little upset about it. But I'll be at the beach. We're good. And it's just the typical 3 days before you leave or 2 days before you leave. You got a class, and then I had a client we were dealing with this morning. So we just got through an inspection, and then my building needs one of the new air conditioners, and I got a quote that was more than it needed to be. So we're trying to fix an air conditioner in late July in Louisiana. That's
perfect.
So, in the midst of all that,
everything's coming up roses for you, man.
Yeah, I'm so glad we asked.
Hey, I could complain, but nobody's looking.
Wait, he said he's going on vacation. Let's focus on the good.
Yeah, he'll get to the beach and everything will be fine.
Very excited. So, family's good, business good. We're just all happy here. So, it's awesome. So, Mr. Evan, first things first. Our words agreement.
Yes.
Why did you choose this particular word? And
well, I kind of I borrowed that from a lot of leadership training stuff that I do, because I feel like leadership agreement is so foundational to everything we do in business, in relationships, on teams, and a real key ingredient to success. So that's why I chose the word. I feel like agreements are sort of a combination between clear communication and commitment. If we make a clear agreement, that means we've talked it over, we both know what we expect from each other, and we commit to carrying out the agreement. And in real estate, in life, all around, I mean, I think that's just key. So that's why I chose it.
Yeah, I love it.
All right. Are we done here?
That's it.
Nailed it.
I'm out.
I like that. I hope someone wrote that clear communication and commitment down. That's fabulous.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think that's the hope in terms of an agreement.
right.
I think that's a little bit what I'd like to get into is sort of where that sounds really nice and I really like the idea, but why is it that it doesn't always end up that way?
Well, I like to apply it to actually whenever we talk about stuff like this, I like to apply it to our business and real estate. And we use, it's like the verbal offer. Somebody says, I want to give you 200,000 for your house. And you're like, deal, and then we have 9 pages of details on what that deal means. And
Yeah.
it's those details, putting them down in writing and making them, unambiguous in language. And then that way anybody can pick it up and know what the agreement was. So I think short of, not like every agreement has to be 9 or 10 pages, but we both need to be knowing what we're agreeing on. And I think when we don't, that's when they go south. Or if you're just not somebody who keeps your agreements, that's going to hurt too,
Well, that's a bummer. Jody, agreement. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because I kind of went with you, Brent, in that why is it so difficult? What's the problems with it? And, one of the things that I kept thinking about was coming to an agreement, right? So that, which in essence says, I move towards you, right?
Right.
Which I think is a big part of our problem is that many people, and it might be really ego based, I'm not really sure, think that everything should come to them and there's no movement. And so agreement becomes very difficult, if not impossible. And it becomes almost in the negative sense to it, as opposed to a positive sort of that. I know it seems to be an overused phrase, but it's so significant, that win-win, those two positives when
Right.
we come together. And I think that's part of where I think your sort of clear communication has to be in that understanding.
Yeah, I love the idea behind it. It is. So Lee, as it relates to the agreement, all right, how do we get that in a real estate transaction? Like, what does it mean?
Well, I think when the word came up, my first thought was, good job, Evan, because there are so many agreements that we have to get to the big agreement and to actually have a closing and get paid, right? I mean, the buyers have to have some common ground with each other on what they want in a home, usually, right? You're usually dealing with more than one buyer. So there's an agreement that starts there. They've got to agree to work with you. Same thing with the sellers. I mean, there's just a whole lot of agreements. So each agreement you get is a win. And I think that the way you get people to come to an agreement, there's a lot of you got a lot of skills in your toolbox to make that happen, right? I think a big one is making sure that everyone feels heard.
Okay.
Right. So if something gets put forth and the response back is just no, sometimes that's a brick wall for us. I mean, most of us can overcome it, but it's not easy. If they say no because, then we have something to work with, right? So I think when people feel like they've been heard, sometimes they will give up their piece, what they thought they had to have, right? If they know they're being heard and respected, they'll budge on that a little bit. And it's easier to get them to the parties to the middle. Is that what you asked?
Visual of coming toward the other person, the way that Jody put it. And now as you're talking, Lee, that's still what I'm picturing is people coming toward each other. I like that visual.
Yeah, listen, I think that's probably one of the key pieces, most underrated pieces of coming to an agreement is when everybody feels like they've been heard and understood, then a lot of time, particularly kind of Evan in your situation where you're in such a big seller's market, buyers realize they're at a disadvantage, but to that end, they still, I want to come to an agreement, but as long as I feel like I'm being heard, it may be a little bit easier. So,
yeah, and that's really hard when they only get one chance. I mean, because like used to, you pitched out an offer and it was a starting place.
Right.
Now you put out your highest and best because there's not going to be any negotiating. And so that means I think that means that the agent has to be listening and hearing every single one of their concerns, because nobody else is going to.
Yeah. Have y'all read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of that, right? When he says you want to hear, like when you start summarize and repeating concerns, he says you want to hear that's right instead of you're right. Well, that's when you know you've gotten on the same page, when somebody goes, oh, that's right, you know, when you kind of have those things.
There's so much psychology in that book that he makes so simple, and word choices and stuff like that. It's just amazing. You think you see the title, okay, Never Split the Difference, got it, you know, but there's so much nuance in that book. I think we've talked about.
Yeah, I would shout out to anyone listening live now with us or in the recorded session. If you have not read that book, like run and get it. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
It fits right into the realtor's wheelhouse, right? It's available on audiobook and it's less than 200 pages. So that's kind of the guiding line. I'm never going to read anything too long. Give it to me on audiobook. It's relatively inexpensive. So,
well, it has applicability outside of the transaction as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you can use those skills to get business. You can use them to keep business, and you can use those skills on your family to get what you want. So read the book.
I'm going to be careful next time I talk to you, now that I know there's all this going on behind this. What's
always a plan.
working on?
But you know, Lee, you bring up another interesting subject of the agreement, and where Evan used that clear communication to commitment in our business is also the agent and their broker. Because, and I think that's sort of that, you know, sort of parental child relationship as well, leading by example. There's a lot of brokers out there who get, and agents who get bought or sold, or just because you're the one that's higher, you have the shiny object, you know, and there's no communication, there's no agreement, and there's no commitment. And decisions and agreements are made on the fly, and that can be really bad for both those parties, but it also translates to not learning that skill to bring to your buyers and sellers as well. So
yeah,
agreement really starts with the broker and the agent in their initial commitment.
I think that's where I started to, this kind of came on my radar. I mean, it's been years now, but from reviewing files over the years, you know, at this point, I reviewed probably 5,000 contracts, I would guess, you know, and you're not party. There's some people over here allegedly have some kind of agreement, and then it comes to you and you start reading stuff. And if one of those people has to tell you verbally what that meant, then that's not a clear agreement, you know?
Right.
And there's just dots that sometimes aren't connected. And then especially like you get the call from somebody who's, you know, redlining because they're so upset, and they're just like, you know, and then you pull out the file and you look and go, I don't even know what this was supposed to say. And
Did you mean flatlining?
No, I meant redlining, not in the real estate sense, but in the RPM sense.
Yeah.
As I said that, I was like, oh,
Like the legal sense.
here I go. No, that's not, yeah, I meant like engines revving high.
I totally was there. I was there.
Thank you.
But Evan, that's a sign of commitment on your part in you're communicating to them. I'm sorry to tell you, and I don't have to tell you because you know you hear this in your classes all the time. There's a heck of a lot of agents and brokerages who have no compliance like that at all. So there's no review process. There's no looking at the agreement or the skills and techniques and tools for that agreement.
Good point.
Yeah, I'm amazed that, I mean, just like there's brokerages out there that there is no oversight, they're not looking at anything, everything's paper. So who knows if they're getting everything right? I mean, it's just, it's scary. And then I think when they go to sell that brokerage, Jody, what kind of an agreement are they going to come to when?
You know, not a lot, unless they find someone that it's another sort of shiny object syndrome. But when you do your due diligence and you're missing some things, it's a significant problem to the value of your brokerage.
Yeah, you're devaluing your assets when you
Yeah.
So Evan, I want to kind of switch gears just a hair and kind of look at it from the leadership standpoint. I mean, I see a correlation between agreement and leadership, but from a leadership standpoint, I mean, sometimes that's kind of the idea, right? You have to be a leader in a room where disagreement is taking place.
Right. Oh, that's true. So I should back up. And there's 3 A's that I talk about in leadership development. It's agreement, authority, and accountability. And
Okay.
and I feel like teams who are rocking those 3 A's are effective and productive and healthy teams. Healthy teams also disagree, right? But at the end, like, we can hash it out, fight it out, disagree, debate, all that stuff. But then when we walk out the door, we have to be in agreement on what happens next. It doesn't mean you are in agreement with the decision. It means you agree to abide by it and carry it forward. Otherwise, you don't have a team. You have this splintered thing that's going in different directions. And I think, like, one of the weakest links is just a failure to talk things through. Do you guys know Gary Nelson from Flagstaff, Arizona? If you've ever been in a meeting with him that he runs, he'll always end the meeting by saying, kind of going around the room and ask if everybody feels like they had a chance to say what they wanted to say, just like a check-in,
Right.
He says it nicer, but it's something to that effect. And I think that's a great way. It's checking for agreement. Like, everybody's on board. And then later, like, you had a chance. It's not to say like you're putting someone in a corner. It's just to let's make sure everybody's talked this out. And then I like to just go around and make sure everybody knows what they're doing next, So that's one way I would apply it to. And when I say leadership, it's just, it can be anybody. It doesn't have to be like a team, in the sense of real estate, but just being a leader, checking for agreement.
So agreement is kind of like buy-in.
Yeah, I think that's, like I said, the way that I think of it is the communication part and then committing to it. So yeah, I guess buy-in would be another way of putting it. Yeah.
Well, I don't want, and I'm glad that you brought sort of it in the leadership standpoint, because really that's kind of what I wanted to address to some degree. I think agreement's important, but I could also argue that disagreement is very important. I really liked your statement, and I don't want it to be lost in the fact that disagreement is healthy. Like, having a very, the 4 of us may end up agreeing at the end, but certainly having that debate and having that disagreement is healthy. So as a leader, I think you should encourage disagreement. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. You don't want a bunch of yes people, right? Because you're not going to do anything worthwhile, I think, if everybody just always is going in the same direction. But I'll give you a negotiating example that I heard about a long time ago that I think applies here, is that every deal, so an agreement and negotiating, happens because people actually disagree. Like, I want to sell this house. Really? I want to buy this house. So we have this distant, or, we're in conflict in terms of our wants.
Yeah.
But at the end, we can both agree, great, you buy it, I sell it. So we're disagreeing, but agreeing to carry out whatever the outcome is.
Negotiations based on fundamental disagreement. I mean,
That's
you
right.
can't have a negotiation if everybody agrees. So yeah, I'm with you. And that's kind of, again, what I wanted to correlate was from a disagreement's healthy, but if we were to get in a meeting and everybody were to agree, I'd almost be a little nervous, right?
Amen.
Yeah.
Well,
Jody?
that's what I wanted to say from what, Evan was talking about from the leadership perspective. If you're in that room and everyone's agreeing, then nothing's getting vetted. Right? I mean, part of our job as leaders is to vet these things that come before us and make good decisions. So yeah, if there is no disagreement, nothing's been vetted, and how solid is the agreement that you've got?
Yeah.
I want to go back to, I'm not in disagreement with any of you. I completely buy in, but I will go back to Evan's explanation of agreement with clear communication. I think there has to be clear communication about the disagreement as well. I think there has to be sort of some rules, so to speak, to it. It has to be civil disagreement. There's a lot of uncivil disagreement out there in the world today, which is not necessarily helping us in many of our situations. And therefore the message gets lost. I think you have to make sure that egos on either side are not, in play as well. I mean, sometimes people don't speak up for an ego reason as well. They don't disagree because they don't want to be the only outsider or that. So I think there has to be some rules or parameters to that clear communication on the disagreement side that get us to agreement.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't disagree with that. Or I agree with that. Don't disagree with that. I don't know. We start talking about these words.
Are we counting how many times we're saying the word today?
So do you all have like tips or ideas for how to help people reach agreements when they're disagreeing? Like, how do you help bring people together? If that was like Jody, what you said about coming toward you, like let's say I'm one of these people, like cross my, and I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Do you have any strategies for reaching agreement?
I'm going to steal one out of that. We all know of it's out of the Real Estate Negotiation Expert program, the RENE program, okay. And it happens to be one of my absolute favorites, and that is that hypothetical bargaining. I think you sometimes have people that are literally paralyzed and can't come to agreement because they can't see the path to that win-win. So when you on the other side literally light their path for them with that hypothetical, well, what if, if the, and the sort of hypothetical action can kind of pull that person back onto the road to agreement. It may not be that hypothetical, just by simply getting them back on the pathway, they will come to that agreement. That's one of my favorite techniques.
Man, you're dropping some awesome bombs today, Jody. I love they can't see the path, so you light it for them.
Yeah.
I love it.
I like the path. Yeah, I think that's the way it is. And my technique would be somewhat similar in the fact that just try and get them back to where they need to be. I like to find commonalities, right? What do we all have in common? What's our common goal? Do you still want to buy? Do you still want to sell? I mean, typically when it comes to disagreements, it's one or two issues, whether it be in a contract, whether it be in a group setting. So what you want to do is recognize, okay, we've been here for 3 hours or 30 minutes or whatever. We've agreed on 10 of these 11 points. Let's focus on the 10. We're in good shape there. The only thing we have to do is wrap up this 11th point. So I think it kind of brings a good broad sense of, okay, we're 90% there. And when you can start, creating the common bond and seeing where we have made progress, then it kind of helps them realize that we're there.
And that there's momentum in that too, right? When you start agreeing on number 1 and number 2 and number 3, by the time you get to 10, like 11, you're already nodding your head, right?
That's right.
Like, there really is a momentum in that. I like
that. I think all the things that y'all have said, but I think even before you get to that point, especially as agents, negotiating for our consumers, the first thing that we have to do before we even get a chance to do any of that is to put our own egos out of the way. And remember that we're not a party to that contract. It drives me crazy when I've got an agent on the opposite side saying, we're not going to do that, or because I'm like, well, is this your money? Is your name on the deed? Or, are you on the loan? What's going on? It's, we feel passionate and protective of our clients. Mm-hmm. So I understand why those egos come up, but as professionals, we stop it.
Yeah.
Get your ego out of the way.
Patrick might pass out because he's in the chat saying earlier that he was shocked to learn there was egos in real estate. And so he's going to need somebody to revive him here.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that would be news to Patrick.
There's not even egos in this call here today. So it's amazing. None whatsoever.
Lee, on that, I would give a shout out to Sherry Johnson, who I think many of you know as well, in a real estate speaker and coach, and that, who is quite famous for always saying to never say my buyers, my sellers. Even that is putting yourself in there, the buyers and the sellers, really make the pathway of agreement to those identifiable parties without you in that picture.
Yeah, those words like that really matter. I think that's really a good tip.
Yeah.
Well, it's like house and home. All the words we use matter.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Evan, I've been writing down some sort of brothers and sister words. I wanted to see how you felt about them, or if anybody wanted to add. So it, you know, from an agreement standpoint, some sort of brothers, sisters, commitment, listen, communication. What else do we have? I just like.
I think those are all components. So I don't have any problem with those. I'll allow it.
Okay. Any you want to add?
I think depending on what you're negotiating, you've got to be a neutral. I mean, obviously, if you're negotiating for yourself, you're not a neutral, but
well, I
go
think
ahead.
the word specifically agreement, it's like all of that stuff can happen, but at the end is where the dust has to settle. And even if it's agreeing to not agree, right? Just that you're clear with each other or everyone involved on where you landed and what happens next. I think that is the key component. And it can be messy on the way there, but you got to clean it up at the end.
I'm gonna add that term of win, because I think that when you are looking to make an agreement, each party is looking to win, and so they have to walk away with that sense of winning, and that makes everyone happily in agreement as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wins definitely stick better, you know?
Yeah.
Well, in a win, sometimes we have to remind people that one person winning doesn't necessarily mean that someone else has to lose.
Correct.
I think that's where Evan's coming from. He wants everybody to feel happy about the initial transaction, which is why I really
Might be a C.
I like him using this word, is because agreement doesn't necessarily mean winners and losers. It means kind of everybody understands where we are. All right. So it's not about winning and losing. It's about everybody understanding where exactly we are. To some degree, you don't have to be happy with it, right? We can say, okay, this is what we've agreed at where we are at this point.
Yeah, let's kind of slice that into two pieces. If we're talking about negotiating the real estate transaction, the win-win agreements are definitely where the target, because those stick. You know, they have a much higher likelihood of sticking. And winning means each party feels like they won, whether you think the other one did or not, right? But we might also have another kind of agreement where you want me to do something, and we are crystal clear in agreement that I'm not doing that for you. We agree. We don't have to agree on what's the right or wrong thing, or I don't have to like it, but we're both no, I'm not doing that. That's still an agreement, right?
Sure.
That's the part that I wanted. That's my takeaway. My takeaway is a lot of times we'll say yeah or uh-huh or okay, right? Where the sarcasm doesn't necessarily come through, where we go, just so you know,
Right.
I was being sarcastic and this is never going to happen, right? So I think that's, but I'm serious. That's a very important part, because a lot of times that gets mixed up in all
It is for Brent.
Yeah.
Well,
Brent, sarcastic? I'm shocked.
but when you want to talk about like relationships, that's where you start planting the seed for discontent later, right? We walk away. I think you were being literal, but you were being sarcastic.
Right.
We have different expectations, and now I'm mad.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to do it. You didn't. You went on with life going, that's just me. That's how I talk. That's my dry wit or whatever, you know?
I'll go back though to what you said, Brent, when you said we have 10 things and we agree upon 9 and 1 we haven't. No agreement is a single topic. I mean, there's always those multiple components in it. And so an agreement is the total picture, right? Not the components of those things that are kind of the give and take from that. Yet when we focus on that 10th that we haven't agreed on, it starts to take on more importance and starts to become the single issue. And that's when you either get the win-lose or you don't get, you get a lose-lose, which is even worse from that position. So I think it's really focusing on the fact that the win-win comes in the total picture of all 10 of those items as you gave in your example.
Well, good. Okay, we're going to wrap things up. Final thoughts. Liam, coming to you first. from an agreement standpoint, all right, what's one thing that we learned that we're going to apply in the next week?
Light the path.
Oh,
good one.
stole it. She stole it. All right. Light the path in order to come to the agreement. Well done, Jody.
Thanks for calling on me first. Okay.
Yeah. How about you? Final thoughts.
I'm gonna steal Evans now. We're gonna do the round robin stealing of it because I love his clear communication. I think that is a critical element, and I think practicing that is so important in our business and in our lives.
I love it.
Our guest, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciated having you.
Thanks.
I will give you the final word, Mr. Evan.
Okay, I'm going to go meta here because I'm going to weave a few things together. Remember when Mabel was on and she talked about building bridges, right? So the idea of building the bridge or creating the path, like Jody said, where people can come closer, come toward each other. And if the other person can't see it, you have to light it, right? So that they can see the path becoming closer. And in all sincerity, I really love all of those visuals because it helps me kind of, sometimes you're across the desk or across the phone or whatever from somebody else, and they're just like being stupid and not making any kind of sense. And I like having the visual to recenter me and go, wait a second, I'm making judgments here. I'm not creating that path. So I really appreciate those visuals, and that's what I'm going to land on.
Well, that's awesome. Well, good deal. That was a good word, Evan. You get a gold star today. Really appreciate bringing the light here. So really appreciate everybody tuning in. We'd love to have you on board. So please feel free to give us a like, give us a follow. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Next week's guest is Elizabeth Mendenhall, and the word is influence. I'm really looking forward. So the three of you don't screw it up.
What's the word next week?
Influence.
Oh, influence. Perfect. All right.
Stay tuned. Really looking forward to it. Y'all have a great day.
Influence them into an agreement.
Next week. Right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.